This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Libya's government of national accord says it has regained total control of the capital, Tripoli. South Africa's government to challenge a court ruling that declared some of its COVID-19 lockdown measures illegal. And rising ocean levels displace villagers in Togo. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here for the latest in the world of business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The African Development Bank will carry out an independent review after defending the bank's president's conduct. And Côte d'Ivoire will restore forests that have been destroyed in order to make way for cocoa plantations. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thanks, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. We begin in Libya, where the UN-recognized government of national accord led by Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj says it has regained total control of the capital, Tripoli. This follows a battle that lasted for 14 months as troops allied to Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar. Prime Minister al-Sarraj is currently on a state visit to Turkey, where he's been holding talks with his key ally, President Tayyip Erdogan. However, the Libyan premier says the battle for Tripoli will only end after Khalifa Haftar's forces have been defeated.
I have stressed to His Excellency the President, and I had promised our people from day one, our battle is not over and we are determined to defeat our enemy, for the state to take control of the entire nation and for the eradication of all those who threaten our democratic free state.
Government fighters have been celebrating the recapture of Tripoli. Forces allied with UN-supported government have also captured a key airport in Tripoli. The fall of Tripoli International Airport came 2 days after the UN announced Libya's warring parties had agreed to resume ceasefire talks following weeks of heavy fighting. Since 2015, Libya has been divided between two governments, one in the east and one in the west.
With that said, on this blessed day, and over a year since the treacherous assault on us from terrorist militias and those who support them, I announce to you the liberation of the capital Tripoli and its outskirts just hours ago. I would like to address the countries that have supported this aggression and that have contributed to the killing of Libyans and the destruction of the country. You lost your bet, and we will take you to court. And here you have just tasted defeat at the gates of Tripoli.
South Africa's cabinet says the government will appeal a court ruling which declares some of its COVID-19 lockdown regulations invalid and unconstitutional. A group called the Liberty Fighters Network had launched a case against the lockdown restrictions. CGTN's Julissa Njamela has more.
The High Court earlier this week ruled that regulations under Level 3 and 4 of the national lockdown had encroached on the rights protected by the Constitution. In its government, the court identified a number of instances of irrationality in the regulations. Government will appeal that decision and wants the appeal case to be heard on an urgent basis.
After obtaining legal advice and listening to numerous comments made by members of the legal fraternity, in reaction to this judgment, we are of the view that another court might come to a different conclusion. Government will ask that its appeal be heard on an urgent basis so that all of us can obtain certainty on the regulations.
Minister Mthembu says the government believes the decisions taken and the regulations declared under the National Disaster Act are lawful and rational, and they are set to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus and to save lives.
Cabinet wishes to assure the nation that all interventions introduced since the declaration of a state of national disaster in March 2020 by President Cyril Ramaphosa have been directed primarily at saving lives. The restrictions placed on the movement of individuals and on the level of activity in the economy have been directed at slowing the spread of COVID-19 infections.
At least one political economist agrees with government on this.
I think there is a huge opposition for the levels, mainly from business, and then they are trying by all means to frustrate the whole process so that they can go through with whatever they want, because they realize that level 4, it is not good for their business, and they were really uncomfortable with that, hence the contestation. But with regard to its constitutionality or not, I don't think that is an issue. The issue is we need to focus in saving people's life, and then the other things can come in as secondary, because when you look on the people that are working, mainly like your working class or people that are working in general work, mining and manufacturing sectors, are the ones that will be facing a lot of challenges.
The cabinet has stressed that while the appeal is underway, level 3 regulations should be observed. Government is hoping that the court will now rule in its favor, because should government lose this case, the lockdown regulations will be dismissed and the National Disaster Management Act will effectively be unconstitutional. Yulisa Njambela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, in Senegal, protests continue against a nationwide curfew imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. This time, demonstrators took to the holy city of Touba to air their frustrations. CGTN's Jen Keo has the details.
The Senegalese city of Touba was the epicenter of the country's current COVID-19 outbreak. It's now the center of protests against the current curfew imposed to help curb the spread of the virus. Many here are frustrated as lockdown measures have hampered their ability to earn a living.
It's because of the pandemic. For the past 3 months, the president has closed the borders and banned all transport inside the country. No one goes anywhere. We are stuck day and night, but we are fathers and we have to feed our children. Drivers have come to a point where they can't take it anymore. Parking their vehicles, they protested to say this situation has been going on for too long and it's too difficult.
Similar protests also took place in the country's capital, Dakar. Police have arrested over 70 people in the capital.
This is certainly the consequence of the state of emergency and the COVID-19 lockdown. I think the youngsters had the opportunity to express themselves.
Demonstrators damaged several buildings and other property in their latest protests. Jin Keo, CGTN.
Schools in Ghana are beginning to reopen as the government further eases lockdown restrictions there. Students have been away from classrooms for more than 2 months now due to the coronavirus pandemic. But some parents fear it is still not safe to send their children back to school. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Letitia Tano has been taking lessons from home since schools were closed in March due to the coronavirus outbreak. She's watching an education channel created by the state broadcaster to teach students. She says it's been difficult adjusting to this style of learning out of the classroom.
When I was in school like this, if I didn't understand something, I had to consult my teacher so that he would explain it to me. But here, since I can't meet the teacher, I find it very difficult understanding some questions and things they'll be teaching on the television.
The government has further eased lockdown restrictions, which will allow schools to reopen later this month. Only final year high school students like Letitia and those at university will return to classes. But some parents are worried about the further spread of the coronavirus when schools reopen.
The COVID-19 has not left, it's still with us. So as a parent, my concern is how safe my child is. Even though we are going to put the necessary measures in place for the child to go back to school, how safe are they over there?
Since Ghana first eased lockdown in April, the country's infections of the coronavirus have kept increasing. The government says the country has to learn to live with the virus. All schools are to be disinfected before they are reopened. A classroom like this, which usually holds 50 students, will now be limited to 30. This is to allow some level of physical distancing among the students. The government has also tasked head teachers with enforcing the strict wearing of face masks and hand hygiene. Some are calling for all teachers and students to be tested for COVID-19 before they are allowed back in schools.
We need to draw up some criteria. And after that, whoever meets that criteria should be allowed to undergo testing. Because we may not be able to handle all of them undergoing the tests. But if the government or somebody suggests that they should be tested, I think it's a good idea. It would have been much better.
Letitia Tano says she's happy to be going back to school, but she may find it difficult complying with physical distancing when she meets her friends. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Over in East Africa, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says the country's economy is holding up despite the COVID-19 pandemic. In his State of the Nation address, President Museveni, however, noted that some sectors of the economy had collapsed during the country's lockdown, even as others recorded growth. Here's CGTN's Michael Baleke with the details.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says the country has exclusively relied on its own agriculture to feed its people during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is on top of the $2 billion it has earned from agricultural exports over the past year. President Museveni also says the coronavirus pandemic has forced Uganda to become more self-sufficient.
In the lockdown, factories are expanding. We had only 2 making sanitizers, now we have 107. By March 2020, there was not even one factory making masks in Uganda. And we were told that there was a global shortage, etc., etc. I told some of our factories, including Nigeria, Yuri, NEC, etc., to make these masks. We now have factories making the masks.
President Museveni proposed measures to keep private farms that have been hit by the COVID-19 lockdown liquid. These include waiving interest on tax arrears, allowing small and medium-sized enterprises to delay payment of corporation tax for 3 months. The government has also decided to support the water and electricity supply and expedite the payment of domestic arrears for goods and services supplied by the private sector to public entities.
The vulnerable economy will come back stronger. Once this virus is over, the reputation of Uganda will be up. And I'm sure even of Africa as a whole. Because Africans have shown that they can survive.
The government, through the Bank of Uganda, has issued measures to commercial banks to allow the extension of loan repayment periods and relax the condition for non-performing loans. The Bank of Uganda will also reduce the reserve funds for commercial banks and create a special fund to rescue businesses that are not able to meet their operational costs. The government is proposing a stimulus of more than $100 million to boost funding for research in new innovations and development of industrial parks, agricultural production and productivity for seedlings, fertilizers, irrigation and value addition. But some critics argue the measures announced by the government do not address the real problems for the average Ugandan. Social rights activists say the president left out important issues concerning children's education, social protection when it comes to food for the vulnerable, and the plans for strengthening the health sector.
Right now, the country needed hope. It needed to know you will take care of us. It needed to know for the most vulnerable, you are hearing us, you are seeing us. For the ladies who had been seated just trying to get a taxi and finding they can't even afford the fare, or the ones who woke up and are just there and they still don't know where to eat.
Apart from the coronavirus pandemic, Uganda has also been battling a locust invasion, rising waters of the lakes, flash floods and landslides. But the government insists it's going to concentrate and consolidate its paltry resources on the production of goods and services which they believe will revive the economy post-COVID-19. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break. When we return, more news making headlines, including rising ocean levels displace villagers in Togo. And we have details on a new initiative to fight terrorism in the Sahel.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. You're watching News Making Headlines right here on Africa Live. Well, the UN says about 1,300 civilians have been killed in conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the last 8 months. More than 500,000 people have fled the violence. UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet says massacres and attacks behind the killings and displacement may amount to crimes against humanity as well as war crimes. Military operations and retaliation attacks against civilians by armed groups in 3 eastern provinces, Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu, have forced hundreds of thousands of people to flee. Now to the unrest in the United States. 2 police officers in upstate New York have been suspended after video emerged of them shoving a 75-year-old man. Footage shows the elderly man was pushed to the ground after approaching riot police in the city of Buffalo. The victim is in serious but stable condition. Buffalo police say an investigation is underway. The incident has drawn widespread condemnation on social media as protests over the police killing of George Floyd entered their 10th night. South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, says it is launching a Black Friday campaign to protest the murder of George Floyd. The campaign is in response to what the ANC terms as institutionalized racism in the United States. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the nation on Friday at the launch. The campaign calls on people to wear black on Fridays in solidarity. It is also meant to highlight deaths by citizens at the hands of security forces in South Africa. Earlier this week, protesters from the Black Solidarity Action Campaign staged a peaceful demonstration outside Parliament in Cape Town, calling upon the American government to address police brutality targeted at African Americans and other minorities in that country. Leaders of some Western European nations are making renewed efforts to tackle terrorism in the Sahel region, including the Lake Chad zone. A multinational mission called Task Force Takuba, consisting of African forces along with European Special Operation Forces, is expected to start operations early next year. But there are doubts whether the new task force will make much difference on the ground. CGTN's Deji Badmos tells us why.
Since 2016, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have come under unprecedented deadly attacks, especially from jihadists. It's estimated that more than 4,000 were killed in the attacks in 2019 alone. As of March this year, at least 1.2 million people have been displaced, majority of them in once peaceful Burkina Faso. And this is in spite of the presence of French Special Forces, the G5 Sahel Force, and UN forces in the region.
This is a very vast region. The region on its own is, I think, 4 times the size of Western Europe, 4 or 5 times the size of Western Europe in terms of geographic area. 1. Number 2, it's sparsely populated. So the resources that will be required to pacify the region are immense. And it's not just a short-term pacification, but a long-term digging in.
And not only is the area vast, it is home to among the poorest countries in the world, where poverty and environmental conditions are at their harshest. The Liptako-Gouma region, which borders Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, is widely considered to be the epicenter of the crisis in the Sahel. And it's a region that the new task force, Takuba, is expected to concentrate on.
Takuba is an additional task force set up by a number of European countries, a number of Western European military powers, which is meant to advise, assist, and accompany mainly the Malian armed forces in coordination with the G5 Sahel partners and other international actors on the ground. So in reality, it's one more body in the region that is meant to complement what already exists. Whether it will make a difference, I have my sincere doubts.
When the G5 Sahel force was set up in 2014, expectations were high that the force, which comprises troops from the Sahelian countries, would put a check to jihadist activities and organized crime in the region. But that has so far not happened. The force has been seriously hampered by funding, leaving the region exposed to increased attacks also fueled by local conflicts.
So at the bottom of this is the poverty and deprivation of the region. When you don't sort that, then radical Islamists will always find somewhere to thrive, as it were. And it's not just it extends pretty much not just in the Sahel, but all the way down to the Atlantic coast, the Niger Delta, and the rest of the areas that are geographically bound to the Sahel region.
It's still too early to tell what impact the new task force Takuba could actually make on the ground. But in a place like the Liptako-Gouma region, where jihadists and their local collaborators are deeply entrenched, the new task force would have its work cut out.
First, there has to be the security solution. That's inevitable. And then there has to be the education, de-radicalization, and then investments in alleviating poverty.
The solutions might sound simple, but they're certainly not easy ones. At least, not for the Sahel. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Dozens of rhinos in South Africa's Pilanesberg National Park, as well as the Mafeking and Botsalano game reserves, are being dehorned. The move aims to prevent armed poachers from taking advantage of the post-COVID-19 crash in the tourism sector. Here's CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy with more.
The rhino dehorning exercise has so far been carried out in 3 of South Africa's main game reserves. Rhinos have been left with horn drums that are too small for poachers to bother with. Experts fear the absence of tourists in national parks may have spurred a poaching spike.
One of the only solutions that we have now is to trim the rhino's horns, and so we've started this unprecedented practice to try and protect these animals by removing their horns. We're not saying it's the absolute solution.
Members of Rhino 9/11 non-profit organization have been working hand in hand with the South African authorities for close to 3 years. They say they have seen a massive drop in rhino poaching since the initiative began.
To relieve the pressure on them, and for that's the reason why we decided that we would be dehorning them now. Now, dehorning is just a sort of a temporary attempt to stop the poaching.
The dehorning process is, however, controversial, as it makes male rhinos vulnerable in fights. Horns are not essential for survival, and just like fingernails, they grow back. As the world marks World Environment Day, the threat from humans to the survival of other species remains a growing concern to conservationists. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Well, let's head over to Togo, where residents in villages near Baguda Beach on the outskirts of the capital Lomé are worried that they could soon be homeless. This due to the encroaching Atlantic Ocean that has forced many people to seek housing elsewhere. CGTN's Jane Keo has the details.
For people like Olivia Afanubo, who live near Togo's Baguda Beach, the rising sea level has caused fear and anxiety. The sands here in the outskirts of Lomé have massively shrunk, making the sea waves lap close to their doors.
I have 3 children. I think that one day the sea will take us by surprise. We won't know where to go.
Sand erosion has rendered 3/4 the population at Bagida Beach homeless. Those who still live nearby struggle on a daily basis to get by the shrinking sands.
I am here, I am there. The sea has destroyed everything. Now I'm tired and I'm also old. I don't know how I'm going to eat.
Residents here also say they cannot make ends meet. Coastal erosion has destroyed agricultural land. Fishing is almost next to impossible, as nets now tear on rocks at the water's edge, and boats have been destroyed by the rising waters. Climate change is slowly accelerating coastal erosion across the globe, and experts say countries on West Africa's Atlantic shore are particularly vulnerable. The encroaching seas may reportedly wash away more than half of Togo's sandy shore by the end of the century. Jane Keo, CGTN.
A Zambian expert says China has always attached importance to matters to do with conservation, even as it pushes for sustainable development. Dr. Sande Ngalande, who is the director of the Belt and Road Joint Research Center at University of Zambia, also says China has always made efforts to protect the environment through creative concepts. According to Dr. Sande, the Belt and Road Initiative is also anchored on renewable energy and creating sustaining of livelihoods.
Belt and Road Initiative, some of the big projects are in sustainable energy. Huge solar farms in Africa, for instance, where we have a very strong sunlight that have been made and planted and contributing to clean energy. And several hydroelectric projects and several other wind energy, different projects, different technologies that have been put across to ensure that the environment is protected, the environment is coming better. So we are grateful to China for a strong message to the world about world protection of the environment.
1 in 4 Nigerian girls suffer sexual violence before they turn 18. That's according to a UNICEF report. And as the United Nations marks the International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression, CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports on the plight of families and victims of child molestation.
Cowed into silence, these 2 young siblings endured sexual abuse. Their 60-year-old landlord allegedly raped them for nearly 3 years. Now 13 and 9, we've had to conceal their identity as minors. But the traumatic experience has left the young children mentally broken and their families seeking justice since 2017.
When I want to take my bath.
I was about to take my bath when my landlord said I should come and take money to buy him something. I told him to wait until after my shower, but he insisted that it was urgent, as he had to go to work. He was pretending to search for money and asked me to help him check as well. While I was helping him look for the money, he grabbed me, covered my mouth with a bed sheet so my scream wasn't loud, loosened my wrapper. There was no one at home. After he was done, he threatened to do it again if my father fails to pay the rent, and that he would kill me if I told anyone. The incident has made me so sad since then.
I wanted to kill myself because of the incident when I hear. I was so disturbed. I'm at work like this, no sickness, nothing. I just fell for ground. I don't know how they even rushed me to the hospital. It's very, very painful for me to discover a man, an old man like this, doing all this with 2 children.
6 out of every 10 Nigerian children have experienced a form of violation, ranging from sexual violence, forced labor, abduction, killing to child terrorism. Sexual abuse of minors is endemic in Nigeria, the girl child being the most vulnerable. The problem is worsened by several factors, including girl-child marriage, insecurity, and a weak justice system. What's worrying is that most cases go unreported.
If we can invest enough
to response protocols to child sexual abuse, then we would have solved the sexual pandemic in the entire Nigeria. Real-time response to whatever the violations deserves investment in forensic analysis and forensic labs, you know, for procurement of, you know, to aid conviction. And that's the thing. And then we also have the issues for domestication of the Child Rights Act, for instance, where we have mostly states in the northern Nigeria, some states in the northern Nigeria, that have refused to domesticate the Child Rights Act. It's an abysmal failure. It's a deliberate way of encouraging crimes related to child sexual abuse in those places, and it should be very discouraged.
Going forward, NAPTIP is coming out with a new strategy. We are going to be naming and shaming all sex offenders, convicted sex offenders. We already have a sex offenders register, which a lot of people might not know of, but we've been carrying out sensitization campaign to raise awareness. It's going to be on the social media.
Nigeria's patriarchal ideologies have exposed females as easy targets for abuse and sexual violence. Now girls and women rights activists are changing the narrative through a massive social media campaign. They have recommended stringent punitive measures for offenders and strong child rights laws to protect children who are most vulnerable. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
A very tragic story. Well, that's all I have for you for now. We'll be back to bring you some more news, including your sports action. But for now, let's hand over to Ramo, who's got the latest in business.
That's right, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. The AfDB will carry out an independent review into its own investigation into the bank president's conduct. And authorities in Côte d'Ivoire are working to restore forests that have been taken down to make room for cocoa plantations.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The board of the African Development Bank says it stands by an internal investigation which cleared the bank's president, Akinwumi Adesina, of allegations of improper conduct. However, the bank says it will still carry out an independent review of the outcome of that investigation. The United States, which is AfDB's second largest shareholder, has demanded a new independent probe into the allegations. The U.S. Finance Minister rejected the bank's probe results, saying he had deep reservations about the integrity of the 3-month-long investigation. The bank's top shareholder, Nigeria, has voiced its support for the current president. Adesina was accused of abuse of office by a whistleblower at the bank. Now, the allegations included favoritism in hiring. He has denied the allegations, and a probe by the bank's ethics board did clear him of any wrongdoing. On to North Africa now. A Tunisian agronomist has been recognized for discovering a new way of injecting air into irrigation water by using an underground diffuser. This buried diffuser, as it were, was selected as one of the top 10 projects from a list of 3,000 across 52 countries. CGTN's Alan Chouachi takes up the story.
Dr. Bilashab Shahbani is the inventor of this technique, which he says ventilates the soil in the area where the roots are located. This process helps transform solid or liquid fertilizers into molecules to be absorbed by the roots of irrigated plants.
This diffuser is for vegetables. It's buried 10 centimeters underground. The second one is for fruit trees. It completely disappears in the soil. The water diffuses from this device at a rate of 4 liters per hour. The buried diffuser is the most efficient technique to bring water to the roots.
The air is injected through an injection device that works with the underground diffuser without a pump or air compressor.
Water does not evaporate with this system. 100 liters of water can remain in the container below the soil surface for up to 1 year. The air injected into the water in the form of small bubbles consists mainly of oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide. This way there's always air in the soil.
The company Shahtech markets several air injection models, including a large model to be installed in the main water distribution pipe, a medium model to be installed at the beginning of the 16mm irrigation water distribution pipe connected directly to the buried diffusers, as well as small model.
My whole family works in the agricultural sector. We have olive and grape trees as well as fruit trees. In recent years, the southern regions of Tunisia have faced drought. It has become impossible to farm in the traditional way. That is why we have opted for installing the new technique for oxygenation of irrigation water. It's affordable and it has revolutionized our farm.
The new system also reduces the doses of fertilizers through a more targeted diffusion and to feed the plant with water and fertilizer at the root. The diffuser is now exported to 9 countries facing the problem of water shortage, including Morocco and the UAE. The buried diffuser is a technology that allows great water savings as it uses 70% less water compared to drip irrigation. The underground diffuser technique is adapted to arid climates which require rationalization of water consumption. Abdel Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Onto the business of foreign capital investment. China has leapfrogged its Western peers to become the biggest single foreign investor in Tanzania. The relationship between the two sides goes all the way back to the 60s when China undertook the construction of a range of projects like the near 2,000-kilometer long Tanzania-Zambia Railway Authority, more commonly known as TAZARA, back in the 70s, and of course the Urafiki textile mills as well. To date, China's total capital flow into Tanzania has exceeded $7 billion. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has that story.
2020 marks 56 years of economic and diplomatic relations between Tanzania and China. Evidence of this relationship is not hard to find. The Tanzania-Zambia Railway is the longest in the nation, and its first ever textile factory, Rafiki, were both constructed by the Chinese government back in the early 1970s. Beijing has since assisted with numerous infrastructure and aid projects all over the country. Shu Yan Wang came to Tanzania 20 years ago. She says the nature of business between the two countries has changed.
Business investment has become more and more. Besides the construction sector, now more people have come to factory, manufacturing and trading, and even financial institutions have come to Tanzania right now.
Data from the Tanzania Investment Center shows that in 2014 alone, the country accounted for 16.3% of China's foreign direct investment to Africa, making it one of the major recipients of China's aid to the continent. It has received more than 100 cooperative projects and programs worth over $2 billion since the early 1960s.
Now, speaking of China becoming a superpower, when you become a superpower, you tend to turn into a donor nation. So China is now a donor nation. We get support from China financially. So apart from economic ties, then financial support which is coming in terms of donation.
China is also the largest project contractor in Tanzania, with investments ranging from infrastructure, mining and agriculture, to manufacturing, hotels, real estate and banks. The long history between the two countries positions Tanzania as one of China's favorite trading partners. The history of trade between Tanzania and China extends beyond 5 decades, and it seems it is still going strong. According to Tanzania's Ministry of Trade and Industry, China has been Tanzania's largest trade partner for the last 3 consecutive years. Trade volumes between Tanzania and China last year alone stood at $4 billion. According to the Tanzania Investment Center, over 200 Chinese companies have investments in Tanzania. The number is expected to grow. It is hoped that the relationship between Tanzania and China can continue to bring mutual benefit for its people. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
On to the Democratic Republic of Congo. A young man over there has developed a prototype automatic hand-washing machine. This device is yet another example of the sort of low-cost innovation we're increasingly seeing coming up amidst this pandemic. Africa's second largest copper producer has over 3,600 positive cases of COVID-19 to date. Here's CGTN's Chris Ochamringa with the latest.
Dominic Kalumba is a 22-year-old Congolese student of electronic engineering. He loves to design and create gadgets. In May, he conceived the idea of creating this automatic hand-washing machine after cases of the COVID-19 pandemic increased in Kinshasa. The machine has sensors that release soap and water when a hand is placed beneath them. It also has a hand dryer.
I studied for 1 year at university, but my parents couldn't afford to continue paying my tuition fees. So I stayed at home and started doing research about creating electronic equipment. I decided to make a hand-washing machine following a rise of cases of the coronavirus in my country.
Most electrical appliances sold in the DRC are imported from abroad. But Dominic wants his compatriots to start promoting locally made products. His machine will be cheaper than imported ones that include shipment costs.
If you look at how countries like the US and others in Europe developed, you realize that it was through such innovations. They do a lot of research and have created large industries. We can do the same here in the DRC.
He has submitted his prototype to the government and requested for financial assistance to mass produce it. The COVID-19 pandemic has been regarded as a nightmare by many people across the world due to the economic disruptions it has caused. But Dominic Kalumba saw it as an opportunity to come up with this automated hand-washing machine. He hopes to cash in once the prototype is fully developed. His product has impressed many people in Kinshasa.
Moi, personnellement, je l'ai vu nulle part.
I used to hear a lot about Dominique before I met him. I was really shocked to see such a young man design an impressive hand-washing machine.
I've known Dominique for quite a long time. He is gifted in creating electronic appliances. He can repair complicated gadgets that have been dismantled and considered useless.
Dominic also plans to design a solar-powered hand-washing machine. Young innovators like him face many difficulties in the DRC. The country is still emerging from social and economic destruction caused by decades of conflict. But Dominic believes fresh ideas like his will help take the country forward. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
And I'll leave you there for the time being. At the top of the hour, I'll be back in Global Business. We'll stay focused on that story about the probe into the AfDB president, Dr. Kinomi Adesina. What exactly is it that the US Treasury Secretary wants to find out in this secondary probe? We'll have the details and the view from Nigeria at the top of the hour. See you there. For now, back to Hannah.
We're going to be looking forward to that interview. Thank you so much, Rama. Well, for now, let's take a short break and return. More news. Here's what's coming up. Uganda to introduce strict regulations for motorcycles to curb high accident rates.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Uganda is starting to introduce strict regulations for the motorcycle industry, commonly called boda. Authorities are pushing to reduce congestion and curbing the high number of accidents. Key among the plans is to digitalize the industry and have all motorcycle taxi operators join a ride-hailing app to govern the industry. But the new rules may phase out hundreds of young people employed in the sector. CGTN's Isabel Nakira reports.
Uganda is kickstarting ride-hailing for motorcycle taxis. To operate within the city centre, all boda riders will have to use the technology. City authorities say they are trying to bring order to traffic management. They hope that by regulating bodas, roads will become safer.
We are going to ask all of them under that law to register all the online bodas. Association will give a grace period for you to register with the ministry, but also for those who are not yet registered online, because now you will most of your activities will be online. We will support you to register online. We will train you.
There are already ride-hailing platforms used in Uganda like SafeBoda, Bolt and Uber, but not many boda riders are using the service. Many say the new rules are too tough and will limit their ability to make money. Only around 16% of Ugandans are estimated to use the internet.
Some of us never went to school. Now when you bring online technology, then you're making life really hard for some of us.
The Kampala City Authority says the boda industry needs regulation to cut down on the confusion and chaos associated with the sector.
The boda industry in Uganda employs thousands of young people, but the growing number of the motorcycles is causing concern to authorities. The City Council says it's creating boda free zones and parking spaces to reduce congestion.
But the riders fear they will lose business.
The only worry is that they might cut down on the number of bodas. I only ask that they shouldn't reduce the number of drivers.
The motorcycle taxi is one of the fastest and easiest ways to get around the heavy traffic in Kampala. And with the new digital system, the government says it will be able to closely monitor their services. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Sport news is coming up after the break. Here's a highlight. Veteran South African midfielder Dean Furman bids farewell to domestic football.
would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for your sport news. We start in South Africa, where Dean Furman has parted ways with his club SuperSport United in order to be closer to his family in the United Kingdom, where he is also expecting the arrival of his first child. Speaking to CGT and CSWC from Manchester, Furman said he had fond memories of his time in the Rainbow Nation.
The Cape Town-born midfielder bids farewell to South African domestic football with a proud record that has seen him amass just under 200 appearances, claim 4 domestic cup titles and reach the final of the 2017 CAF Confederation Cup, while accumulating a milestone of 50 caps for the national team, as well as captaining both club and country in the process.
To have lived and played in South Africa for 5 years, both on and off the pitch, it was absolutely an incredible experience. On the pitch, winning trophies, traveling the continent with SuperSport, really immersing myself into a different dressing room with different people from different backgrounds. Getting to know my teammates and my coaches was very, very special.
Well, I mean, I know that you're not done with Bafana, and you still remain a great ambassador for football over there. What are your where are you looking to land going forward now? Where are you targeting, and where would you like to be playing football?
The aim was certainly to be closer to the family with the birth on the way of my child. So that's certainly still the thinking, and I guess we're just going to have to play a bit of a patient game at the moment and wait for things to unravel and see what the fallout is in the coming weeks and months.
But you are still available for the national team, and you would like to add yet another Africa Cup of Nations, I'm sure, to your belt. You've got quite a few under your belt now.
Yeah, I would love to get to number 4. I mean, for me, it'd be very interesting to see what happens with AFCON. I know that's meant to be in January, so it'd be very interesting to see if that can go ahead. Certainly, once we find the club here, or my next club, wherever that may be, then I will have a conversation with the coach of that club and Coach Molefe and see if we can hopefully find a solution that's suitable for everyone.
Whether Furman plays in Europe or in the UK, he remains a valuable asset to South Africa's national team. And Coach Molefe and Seki will do everything in his power to keep the 51-cap veteran in his squad. Furman's experience, his work rate and ability to read a game will be heavily relied upon, especially when Bafana head to the next AFCON, aiming to go further than the quarterfinals a year ago. CSWC, CGTN, Johannesburg.
Spanish giants Barcelona have confirmed that their star player Lionel Messi is suffering an injury. According to the club, Messi has a right thigh minor muscle ailment and is undergoing specific exercises to avoid unnecessary risks. All this comes just 8 days before the team resumes its title defense. Messi's club says he is training separately as a precaution ahead of the restart of the Spanish league next week. Barcelona visits Mallorca on June 13th in its first match since the league was suspended nearly 3 months ago. Elsewhere, an independent investigation into the International Weightlifting Federation by Canadian law professor Richard McLaren has revealed that the IWF was plagued by decades of corruption. According to Professor McLaren, it was all orchestrated by former President Thomas Adjan. Adjan denies any wrongdoing. The allegations include vote buying, doping cover-ups, and $10.4 million in cash that cannot be accounted for. Adjan had been at the IWF since the mid-1970s, serving first as Secretary General and then as President from 2000 until his resignation in April 2020. McLaren's team has forwarded all the information on the findings to WADA for further investigation.
Without records,
receipts, and paper audit trails, it is absolutely impossible to determine how much of the cash collected was used for legitimate expenses. We identified several occasions when large sums were withdrawn in advance of continental elections and electoral congresses, where it is alleged that Dr. Ayan used the IWF's resources to buy votes, as I mentioned earlier.
We cross over to the U.S., where NFL star Drew Brees has apologized for equating protesters kneeling with disrespecting the U.S. flag and the military. The New Orleans Saints quarterback was asked whether he would change his position from 4 years ago when former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick started kneeling to bring attention to police actions. Following rebuke from athletes, including teammate Michael Thomas and basketball superstar LeBron James, the Super Bowl 44 winner took to Instagram to issue an apology.